Good Friday evening to you. Hope your weekend is off to a good start. Welcome to More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. Plenty of NFL football, especially Browns football, to talk about. The NFL draft is coming up in just a few weeks, and there are some definite challenges with this draft. No pro days, also no in-person visits to do the interviews. Everything has to be done remotely because of the coronavirus pandemic and folks being locked into place and non-essential people not going to work. That means the NFL teams haven't gone to work. It's created some challenges, especially for first-year head coaches like Brown's new head coach, Kevin Stefanski, but he says it's the same type of challenges that all 32 of the teams face. The first-year head coaches, though, have some unique challenges.
I'm here in Minnesota. I've been here for, maybe 2 weeks. The plan was not to come out here for 2 weeks, but I kind of got, I don't want to say stuck out here, but we paused our move. We postponed our move, like I guess everybody in their life is doing right now, postponing some things. So we're just taking it day by day, working remotely, which I'm happy to kind of talk through how that's been going. But a lot of family time. This is definitely testing my parenting skills. I'm one of the better gym coaches there is right now. PE's been a big hit in this household, but just we're like everybody else, taking it one day at a time and staying safe and really staying together and listening to the advice of the public and medical officials. We're making sure we're staying home and being safe, and I hope you're doing the same. But strange times, but again, we're full steam ahead, getting ready with our team, getting ready with our program, and really ready to deal with whatever the rules come out to be for this offseason. So with that, I'll take any of your questions.
Hey, Kevin, how challenging is this kind of day-to-day? You never expected anything like this. None of us ever did. But how challenging is this to be a first-time coach trying to put together all you have to put together to get ready for a season that we're not even sure we're going to have?
I mean, I think it's a challenge like I think all of us are having a challenge. I think every one of our fans, and their work setup is very similar to my work setup right now. So a lot of Zoom calls and Microsoft Teams and FaceTime calls, and you just got to make it work. So I don't look at it from any other perspective than that. And, I think all 32 teams are at the same disadvantage, and that's the truth. So everyone's dealing with it, and for us, our big thing is just day by day. It's a very fluid situation, as we all know. So we are just awaiting word from the league on how they're going to handle certain things, and then we'll adapt and adjust accordingly.
Kevin Stefanski, Browns head coach, forced to work remotely from Minnesota. Let's welcome in Cleveland Browns beat reporter Ellis Williams. Ellis, here on cleveland.com. You were part of that conference call. What really stood out? What kind of struck you as far as Kevin Stefanski talking with the media?
Well, first, he confirmed what we all were wondering. Is he working remotely like the rest of the league, and where that may be? And turns out, much like myself, he's back in the beautiful state of Minnesota. Unlike him, though, I'm not trying to run an NFL football team for the first time, and I can't imagine the challenges he's facing right now. These teams are having virtual meetings, virtual draft meetings, offensive game planning meetings, all virtually. And look, we're all adjusting to life on Zoom now, if you will, but you can't replicate getting in an office, talking X's and O's, talking players, talking draft boards, and just being in the facility, creating a culture that the Browns are trying to find. So that really stood out for me at first. And going forward, we're going to have to see how this team adjusts, because like you said, the rest of the league is dealing with this, even though I think there's a clear disadvantage to the newer head coaches, even though he's trying to, project the right thing, saying we're going along as scheduled. But the hardships must be just immense as a first-year head coach in Kevin Stefanski.
And just as a point of reference, the NFL allows teams with first-year head coaches to have an extra mini camp and those kind of things where they can get in and do some things. The thing that really struck me, he talked a lot about players that they've signed that fit the scheme. And I think that was kind of good to hear. Several times you heard that.
Yeah, again, and it confirms something we've been talking about with the signing of Austin Hooper. He said this is a guy who checked all the boxes. And that's exactly the situation they ran into with adding Hooper. look, they paid $11 million a year for a guy who really can't win in man coverage and isn't Travis Kelce or George Kittle or Zach Ertz. But that's okay because he does what Stefanski needs to do in running zone concepts and getting open in space. He plays well without the ball. That's a basketball term, but we can use it in football with Austin Hooper, I think. And it makes sense that they landed him because if you look at the draft, it's a weaker drafted tight end. So in order to do what they wanted to do, they had to land Hooper. So again, this conference call confirms some things that we've been talking about when it comes to the signings, whether it's Hooper or Conklin or Case Keenum. They fit what he's trying to do.
The other thing that he made pretty clear is a big supporter, big believer in Baker Mayfield. That was pretty clear that several times he made that point.
Yeah, and it really puts to bed any sort of argument or debate that this was going to be. The Bears just came out today and said that their quarterback competition is open between Nick Foles and Mr. Trubisky. There's going to be the complete opposite of that in Cleveland now with Case Keenum and Baker Mayfield. And Stefanski put that to bed as he should. It was the mature and right signing to make rather than a Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota that could, turn things up here. And perhaps one of those guys played well and you could flip him for a draft pick in the preseason or something like that, similar to what the Eagles did with Sam Bradford in the Carson Wentz situation a few years ago to the Vikings. Kevin Stefanski knows all about that. But instead they grabbed Case Keenum to reassure Baker this is your gig. And until Baker does something to lose it, he's going to be set up to succeed here.
Also, Kevin Stefanski, pretty significant praise for Case Keenum. Made the point that definitely wanted to get Case Keenum as kind of more of a steadying influence. And again, Case Keenum's got to come in and if they need him to win a game, he can win a game, he can win a couple of games. But he wants that approach and that steady pro hand to be in that quarterback room as well.
Yeah, it's really a huge contrast to the quarterback room that they had last year. They wanted to come in and really revamp this thing, and they've done that. He spoke very highly of Case Keenum, as he should. They've got a connection from Minnesota, and he was a proven winner that year. And then he hopped around for a few different teams, and now he's back with a coordinator he's used to. And it gives Baker Mayfield a leader in the room, even though Case Keenum has said, he's not there to coach. Naturally, when you get around the guys, whenever that may be, you're just going to talk football. And he's going to be able to teach Baker some things that he wasn't picking up earlier in his career. Baker's had a lot of turnover. That's no secret. I don't need to tell anyone that. But to come in and have a consistent veteran leader like Case Keenum, you're not going to see it, on game day because hopefully what Case has taught Baker, he'll just be showing it. But Keenum's going to be the silent guy on the sidelines, making his moves and his movements in practice in the meeting rooms. And that's where he's going to pay off the most, assuming he doesn't have to get on the field.
The flip side of it that may get overlooked as well, especially with this compressed area where Baker Mayfield won't have as much time as he normally would with Kevin Stefanski's offense. He's got a guy that can answer pretty much any question that he would have about what Kevin Stefanski wants in that quarterback room with him, which I think is a huge it's a huge asset given the times that they're going to be dealing with.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It might be a sneaky reason why this is an even better signing than we think. Case Keenum's going to now turn into an extension of the head coach. And in this virtual world we're living in at these meetings, you're going to need even more instruction because Kevin Stefanski can only do so much remotely, as we said. And I want to give a little pushback at the top where Kevin said that, every team's dealing with this. And he is right about that. But let's be clear, like you said, with the first year head coach mini camps, and things they're going to miss out on. Teams that have continuity within their staffs, you think of the Kansas City Chiefs, the Green Bay Packers, the 49ers, and for the most part, the Patriots, despite losing Tom Brady, teams like that who have familiarity within their program, this is going to be easier to navigate for them just because they're going to come back and probably run a lot of the same stuff they did last year because they didn't have time to build on anything. Where you have a team like the Browns, obviously, who are trying to completely revamp everything. I think it is going to put Cleveland at a slight disadvantage. So though the whole league is dealing with this, it gives teams with a similar staff an advantage. But again, like you said, that's why Case Keenum becomes even more valuable in becoming an extension of head coach, which I'm sure he's serving, whether it's through virtual meetings or when they're eventually able to sit down in person.
Ellis Williams, beat reporter for the Cleveland Browns here on cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Ellis has looked at some of the new guys and how they might fit into the Browns, has some thoughts on some guys to keep an eye on as we move forward. More sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. We'll be right back talking Browns with Browns beat reporter Ellis Williams here on More Sports and Les Levine.
Celebrate Naturestone's 30-year anniversary with a free Naturestone floor. During 2020, we will be giving away 30 free floors to 30 very lucky customers to say thank you for making Naturestone the best concrete flooring solution for garages, basements, and more. Call or visit Naturestone.com today to register to win, and we'll send you a copy of our new buyer's guide absolutely free. There's no purchase necessary. Winners will be chosen monthly. With over 30 million square feet installed for more than 60,000 customers, it's easy to see why I always say it's not just a floor. Wow, it's Naturestone.
Got your Ohio Lottery pick 3, I see.
Yup. Those glasses are hip.
Hip? Most people think I'm a square. But what's wrong with that? A box bet can increase your chances of winning. And what is a box? A square. There are so many ways to play. There's coming out the wazoo. Oh, shucks. Look at me yammering on. Put a lid in it, Picky Ricky. Play the Ohio Lottery pick 3 today.
There are tastes we remember. Every smell brings the happiness of times gone by. Experience this every time you walk into Gallucci's Italian Foods. Whether you need lunch on the go, a catered party, or that perfect blend of wine, meats, and cheeses, Gallucci's has exactly what you're looking for. Straight from Mama's kitchen for old world traditions or original experiences. From the tastes you remember to new flavors you'll never forget. Gallucci's is a tasty branch of your family tree.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to More Sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. We're going to continue talking Browns. We're going to welcome back Ellis Williams, Browns beat reporter here on cleveland.com. And Ellis has done some pretty good work looking at what Andrew Billings, one of those defensive guys that kind of floated a little under the radar, what he might mean. Billings, a young guy. What did you see on him? You did a very interesting film room breakdown on him. What did you find? What did you like about Andrew Billings?
Yeah, this Billings signing, and really with the Claiborne signing too at defensive end, is the opposite of what the Browns have been doing offensively. Of course, they're signing big names offensively, paying them a lot of money. You turn around and you get Billings on a one-year deal. What's intriguing about Billings is he's only 25 years old. He's fighting for that second contract. He's on what we'll call a prove-it deal. And where he differs from the other defensive tackle and Larry Ogunjobi is this guy knows how to stop the run. He's 330 pounds, 6'1", compared to Ogunjobi, who's listed at 305, and during the season you probably get to like 295 there, 300. That's a lot of weight when you're talking about stopping the run. None of us in Cleveland are going to forget how the Browns ended last season. I think it was somewhere around like 640 yards they gave up in 3 games, 2 to the Bengals, 1 to the Cardinals in the desert there. Kenyon Drake rushed for 4 touchdowns. Kyler Murray added 56 on the ground. And I think Joe Mixon had like back-to-back 130, 140-yard games. They got carved up, and that's what Billings brings in. He's going to be a run stopper there. What he can't do is rush the passer. He's got, I think, 3 career sacks in 4 seasons. He's not going to get after the quarterback, but that's all right. Joe Woods is going to roll these guys in and play situational, and where Billings is going to make his mark and be able to compete for a starting job is when you're facing teams like the Ravens twice a year, the Bengals and Joe Mixon, and then even the Steelers, even though they've thrown it around a bit more in the past, they're probably going to get back to a more run-focused team, assuming Big Ben's health and James Conner. And then, of course, the Ravens and Lamar Jackson set a league record last year for yards and attempts. So the Browns know they need to stop the run in the AFC North, and that's what Billings is going to be able to do.
And again, Billings, run stoppers aren't really sexy. Guys don't pay to have somebody shut down the run. But given the way the Browns have performed against the run, maybe they should pay for somebody to shut down the run.
Exactly.
Is that kind of what you're getting at, though? This is a guy that does the non-sexy things that all good defenses seem to have in the middle of their defense.
Yeah, I think Kevin Stefanski, Andrew Berry, and really Joe Woods are making it pretty clear that they believe football is one up front, offensive and defensive lines. You can have all the flashy toys on the outside, but if you can't block on offense, you can't get the ball out. And if you can't stop the run or control the line of scrimmage on defense, teams are going to be able to do what they want against you at will. So like you said, Billings isn't the sexy signing. He's not going to have these huge sack numbers, but he's going to move the pile and make things difficult on first and second down. Then you're facing third and long, and guys like Myles Garrett can get after the quarterback, and that's what Joe Woods is going to try and do with this defense.
The other thing, signed a fullback. Not a lot of NFL teams still have a fullback. And the Browns signed one, Andy Janovich, 26 years old, formerly with the Broncos. What do you see with Janovich? What do you think of that signing?
Yeah, Janovich is interesting. You're not going to find any stats on this guy that blow you away. He's got like 23 catches for 230 yards, and he's got about like 15 carries. Same thing when he was a 4-year player in Nebraska. He didn't get the ball much, but what he does is he plays well within a scheme. And he knows how to create good blocking angles at fullback. And in space, he's a sure pass catcher at 6'1". He has a radius that he can go get some footballs. And he's athletic enough to sneak in a few carries here and there. Janovich can only be as good as Stefanski schemes him up. But when you look at a guy who is the role model or the blueprint for this, it's Kyle Juszczyk of the 49ers. That guy makes about $5.5 million a year this upcoming season. He's the highest paid fullback, and he earns more than a lot of NFL running backs. That's how valuable Kyle Shanahan views him. Stefanski's trying to do a little bit of the same here. In Minnesota, it was C.J. Ham, who made his first Pro Bowl last year and signed a 4-year, $12 million extension. He'll make $4 million this year guaranteed. So if you can take the mold that C.J. Ham was, where he's 5'10", Janovich is 6'1", it gives you a little more opportunity in the passing game. And again, Stefanski's going to scheme some stuff up for this guy. And I can see a three-headed monster in the backfield of Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, and Janovich, where all the attention's on everyone else, and then this kid slides in and picks up that critical first down or scores a touchdown in the fourth quarter because no one's expecting it from this guy, but he can make plays when he's asked to.
And you mentioned scheming it up. Fullback is something that what we have seen, it's huge in the type of offense that Kevin Stefanski wants to run. They need a fullback. This is the guy that they went out and targeted.
Yeah, much like the Hooper and Conklin signing, he wasn't going to be able to run his offense without this piece. Last year, we saw plenty of two-back sets with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and the Browns were at their best when they did that. But one thing about the Browns' offense last year, outside of Odell Beckham Jr., is they were relatively healthy. Stefanski understands that he doesn't want to be throwing Kareem Hunt out there to lead block when he needs a lead blocker. That's a valuable offensive piece that could take one wrong hit and you lose him for the season, and now you're down to Nick Chubb. Or, the other way. Running back, you could get beat up. Nick Chubb's out for some time. Well, there you have Kareem Hunt. You're not going to miss a beat. So bring in a fullback who can take those hits and then be deceptive in coverage, and you can take advantage of a big game, because I'll tell you, defenses always know where Kareem Hunt is. Defenses are going to lose track of where Janovich is, and that's going to help the Browns immensely this season.
Who of the guys that they've signed that we haven't talked about, who do you like? Who do you think fits best? Who do you expect big things from this year of the guys that Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry have brought in thus far through free agency?
Yeah, I think one name to watch is Andrew Sendejo. He had a real interesting ride in Minnesota. He was a special teams guy who then was trusted with playing either free safety or strong safety. He can do both. He's a big guy around 6'1", 6'2". He uses frame to come down and stop the run or be in coverage. Look, he's on a 1-year deal for a reason. He's on the wrong side of 30, and he had some penalties last year that you hate to see, but he's a guy that if you can get him to play right, he's going to make plays in that secondary. And it's a position where the Browns are clearly going cheap. They're going a bit older, and they're hoping that they can hopefully find some guys in the draft, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But Sendejo is a guy who's going to step in and not only provide leadership, but day one starting opportunity. And if he can come in and hold that spot down, it's going to be a return that the Browns probably aren't expecting. They're taking a flyer on this guy, but he's proven it before with Mike Zimmer in one of the better defenses over the past 5 or 6 years. And if he's able to come in and erase those penalties, I think the Browns fans are going to be surprised at what they have in Sendejo.
Ellis Williams, Browns beat reporter here on cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of break, we'll take a look at some of the areas the Browns still need to improve and address as they move forward, not only with the draft, but also potentially some free agents that are still out there lingering. More sports and less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. Ellis Williams and I will be right back after this timeout. Stay with us.
As a kid growing up, my dream was to go to college, play baseball, and get a degree. Coming out of high school, I had two choices. I was accepted into a four-year university, but I decided to come to Tri-C after receiving a scholarship. I got my associate's degree at Tri-C. They transferred all my credits straight into Baldwin-Wallace, so I started at Baldwin-Wallace University as a junior. My name is Tyler Leonard, and I earned my first degree at Tri-C.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
It takes attention to detail. With your local Bryant dealer, you're getting more than just a technician. You're getting someone who pays attention to your needs and the little things that make a big difference. It takes a dealer you can rely on. And to keep your family warm this winter,
here, let me show you how this works.
It takes Bryant.
Bryant, whatever it takes.
And to keep your family comfortable, it takes Smiley One Heating and Cooling. Find them at smiley1.com.
Welcome back to More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. We've talked about a couple of the free agent signings that the Browns have made and some of the challenges that first-year head coach Kevin Stefanski and the Browns will face as they have to work remotely. Let's welcome back in Ellis Williams, Browns beat reporter here on cleveland.com. Ellis, when you look at this roster, there's still some areas, in my view, that need to be upgraded. What do you see as some needs? Just some position groups and some areas that the Browns still need to address via free agency if they choose to, or the draft.
Yeah, it's a lot of the stuff we've been hearing. It continues to be, though they're bringing in these one-year deals on the defensive side of the ball, you have to assume that they're going to address safety and linebacker in the draft after they take care of the left tackle position. And after that, you look at this offensive line, the spot not many people are talking about is right guard. Will it be Wyatt Teller? Could it be Drew Forbes? Or is that another position where the Browns could sneak up and use a third-round pick on a guy they're going to add to that offensive line? You know, investing, let's say, a first-rounder and a third-rounder on the offensive line sounds like a lot, but that will shore up the line, and you can go forward knowing Baker Mayfield has 5 solid guys in front of him. Look, 4 out of 5 is better than a lot of NFL teams have right now, but there's going to come a time where you're going to ask that right guard to block one-on-one, especially inside against some of these craftier interior defenders. And that's all it takes is one lineman to slip up and your third down is crushed. So I could see them addressing right tackle, even though we keep talking about how linebacker and safety are such a need. So excuse me, right guard.
And then, you know, we've talked a couple times. They probably need to get another wide receiver as well. You know, Higgins probably won't be back. Rashard Higgins won't be back. And news earlier today that Demarius Randall definitely isn't going to be back. He signed a 1-year deal with the Las Vegas Raiders. Wide receiver, an area that you also look for him to potentially upgrade. And what do you think about a backup quarterback, a young developmental type quarterback?
Yeah, I think those are two spots the Browns are going to look. We'll start at wide receiver. Kevin Stefanski really did not target his third wide receiver in Minnesota at all. And that doesn't mean this team isn't going to run out of 11 personnel. They need to be able to do that, I'm sure. Perhaps you could see Austin Hooper sliding into the slot and them having a second tight end on the field and using Hooper really as their third receiver. Kareem Hunt essentially did that last year too. But on top of this upcoming season and them adding a third receiver, just in general, they probably need to start grooming someone for the future when it becomes too expensive to pay Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. I know that's something a lot of people probably don't want to hear, but these two likely aren't going to be on the team long term. That's a lot of money to put into two positions that you're getting 1,000-yard receivers out of. And I'm sure someone like Kevin Stefanski thinks that he can scheme up receivers to fit what he's trying to do, a lot like the Rams did in Los Angeles with a guy like Robert Woods, who was an afterthought in Buffalo and turned out to have a handful of good years. So I do think receivers something they'll address. A guy like KJ Hill stands out to me, someone you can find in the middle of rounds, Ohio State guy, looks up to Jarvis Landry. He mentioned that at the combine. I could see that. And again, like you said, as for finding development, I just think in general, they're going to bring in younger bodies with the draft capital they have. And one thing we need to keep in mind too, is this team is looking to get in the compensatory market. That's why Olivier Vernon is probably still on this team, because they can't fill his spot, and letting him walk next year could land you a third or fourth round compensatory pick. So the Browns are trying to load up on these draft picks and get a young roster in general and take advantage of the leadership they'll have in the locker room. And then for the next generation of players, the Browns, it's no secret, have not drafted well in the past. And when they have drafted well, players still leave because of the turnover. So that's something that this new staff is trying to change. And that comes with hitting on these picks, and not only hitting, but keeping them in the building, like you said, to groom this young talent that they're now going to bring in the 2020 draft.
Is there a position that you kind of say, keep an eye on this, they may look to upgrade this position, even though it looks like they're pretty strong? I mean, cornerback is kind of where I'm going with that. Could you see them bringing in a cornerback? You know, I know Denzel Ward, I know Greedy Williams, those are high picks, but those are guys that really haven't done it consistently, what they need them to do.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. And that's really the beauty of the NFL draft. We can mock these things out and we can say what these teams need. And quite frankly, a lot of these mock drafts are just made based on team need anyway. But what happens on draft day when a team zigs when you thought they would zag, and all of a sudden a cornerback falls to you and you didn't think he'd be there, and though you don't need it, it becomes a luxury, and then it gives you flexibility in the trade market and whatnot. So I think there's a lot of truth to that, where this organization will react to what happens and be ready to have a backup plan if players do fall. They're not just going to stick to their concrete needs. On top of cornerback, I want to mention tight end. Right now, though, it looks like that room is secure with, of course, the signing of Austin Hooper, David Njoku getting a second chance, and it sounds like Kevin Stefanski's high on Steven Carlson, as he should be. I'm sure people don't forget that touchdown he had in the back of the end zone last year. That was quite impressive. He had flashes. But if a tight end in the third or fourth round, though it's a weaker class, if you can get the number 1 or 2 tight end on the board, I think of the kid from Notre Dame comes to mind, they're going to do something like that, because Njoku likely doesn't have a future on this team past this year. He's due some money that isn't going to work out with the books, considering the contracts they gave out this offseason. So they're going to exploring trying to trade Njoku most likely. And if you can land a rookie to then supplant him later in the offense, it makes sense to land a guy like that. You can't have enough smart tight ends on the team. And like you said when we started this, cornerback is a spot where you can't have enough depth either, because these guys are expensive to pay too. So you're going to have to make a decision to pay Denzel Ward, or you groom the young guy to eventually take his spot. And I think those are the 2 spots in the draft. I wouldn't be surprised if they went there, even though the rooms look complete right now.
When you talk tight end, how important is it that the tight, and we've talked a little bit about this, with what Kevin Stefanski wants to do, the tight ends better be able to block and catch the ball. It can't be a one-dimensional guy there. That is such a critical part of what he wants his offense to look like.
Yeah, in a way, it's really the focal point of the offense. Tight end is one of the hardest positions, if not the hardest position to play on offense after quarterback. You need to know the entire run game, the entire pass game, and understand the defensive concepts when they're coming down on picking up blitzes, or when they're falling into zones and where these holes are in these coverages. It is a completely complex and difficult position to handle. And if you can't do it, Kevin Stefanski's not only going to know right away, but you're going to cause his offense to flutter. And that's 2 quick ways to get you on the sidelines, not to mention David Njoku has a history of the drops. Let's say you do everything right, you run a beautiful route, and you get open and you drop the football, much of what Browns fans are used to. That's another way to find yourself on the bench. So I think that's one position Kevin Stefanski, look, he hasn't said anything like this, but just in my playing experience, it's a position that he relies upon. And when coaches are passionate about that spot, and it's kind of the straw that stirs the offense, if you will, he's going to have a shorter leash with guys like that, and he's going to be trying to improve that position each year because it is a focal point, and he can't do the things he wants to do without two competent, talented, and smart tight ends out there.
Let me ask you, the way that the Browns want to run the ball, zone running scheme, what are you looking for in tackles at that position? What are some of the key things that a tackle in the scheme that Kevin Stefanski runs needs to be able to do to run the ball effectively?
Yeah, so much of it comes down to your feet. You need to be able to get lateral. You need to be able to stretch, and you really need to be able to keep pace with the linebackers that flow with zone. When the linebacker is making their read, they see the guards flowing. They're flowing immediately that way. And if your tackles can't get out there and meet those linebackers on the edge, you're forcing a cutback lane for your running back, and they're getting smashed. And that's a lot of what happened last year. We saw the numbers where the Browns did fine running behind big tackles like Greg Robinson. He's a guy who he can push the guy in front of him just fine, and he's going to make a lane. But when you ask him to get lateral, he's not out there fast enough to compete with the linebackers, and his running backs are getting out there before him too. And again, then you have a natural cutback lane that isn't there because you're forcing him back to your help, which comes down to simple containment. And that's what makes the Conklin signing absolutely perfect, because he was doing that in Tennessee really better than any tackle in football. And then when we look towards the draft, it really highlights a guy like Andrew Thomas, who was already running the zone scheme at Georgia, and potentially Tristan Wirfs, who probably graded out as the best left tackle athletically. And in a way, I think it might take Mekhi Becton off the board, though and look, the Browns could draft him, and I could look like an idiot for saying this, but Becton ran a great straight line 40, but he's that prototypical, giant 6'6", 350-pound tackle where you worry a little bit about his ability to get outside. So I think the Browns may let the Becton height go. They're probably happy it's happening, and then they could have a guy like Thomas and Wirfs follow him. I know we're talking draft later, but as we're talking zone scheme, those are the names that pop up when you think of outside zone. So they'll match great with Conklin, and that's what really the Browns are looking for as they keep building this offensive line and the rushing game they're trying to have.
Again, Ellis Williams, we're going to step aside, take a quick time out, and Ellis got a little into what we're going to talk about. We'll talk about Browns NFL draft, not only the first round, but some of the other guys that you might want to keep your ear out for in the second and third rounds as well. NFL draft only a few weeks away now as we look towards that end of April. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. When we return, we're talking draft. More sports and less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. We'll be right back here on cleveland.com. Stay with us.
Get Nature Stone for up to half off and never replace your garage flooring again. Cracked, uneven garage floors are dangerous. Thin paints and poly coatings you can do yourself are slippery, peel, and don't correct problems. Why pay for a floor that won't last? Only a professionally installed Nature Stone garage floor is safe and corrects problems that paints can't. And Nature Stone comes with Russell's Promise, our true unconditional warranty, so there are no hidden maintenance costs. Schedule online today at naturestone.com to qualify for up to half off. Hurry, offer ends April 30th. It's not just a floor, wow, it's Nature Stone.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Presque Isle Downs and Casino has sports betting. Use one of our 50 state-of-the-art Bet America kiosks to place your bet and watch your favorite games on one of our many HD televisions, or visit our sportsbook area. Only at Presque Isle Downs and Casino.
Welcome back to More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. NFL Draft will happen on schedule late April, and mock draft season well underway, and some multiple round mock drafts are what we're looking at this week. Let's take a look at ESPN's Todd McShay. His latest mock draft has the Browns taking Jedrick Wills at 10. Now, the Cardinals, he has taking Tristan Wirfs and Isaiah Simmons going 4 to the Giants. He has the Browns taking Wills with Becton still on the board. Then in the second round, he has the Browns taking a safety from LSU, Grant Delpit, which a big hitter from the LSU Tigers, the national championship team safety, with the second round pick, number 41 overall. Let's move on. Jeff Hansen from Sports Illustrated has Wills going 4. He has the Cardinals taking Wirfs. Then he has the Buccaneers trading up to take Andrew Thomas ahead of the Browns. So he has the Browns taking Isaiah Simmons, linebacker from Clemson. And then coming back in the second round and getting a tackle in Ezra Cleveland, offensive tackle from Boise State. And he also has the Browns taking a safety in the third round, Ashton Davis from Cal, who a lot of people like, and then a familiar name to Buckeye fans. He has the Browns later in the third round taking a interior defensive lineman, Devon Hamilton from Ohio State. And finally, Chad Reuter from CBS has Miami trading up to get Tristan Wirfs at 5, Becton going 6. He has the Browns taking Andrew Thomas, the junior, the tackle from Georgia, with Isaiah Simmons still on the board. Then he has the Browns going guard, Damian Lewis, another one of those LSU Tigers, a guard at 41. Going linebacker with Willie Gay Jr. from Mississippi State at 74. And a safety, Brandon Jones from the Texas Longhorns, going later in the third round. That's Chad Reuter from CBS Sports. Let's talk some more draft with Ellis Williams from cleveland.com, Browns beat reporter. And Ellis, we talked a little bit on the other side of the break. Who are the guys you like at tackle, assuming the Browns go tackle? Who fits the scheme best? Who can you see being the guy that would really work in this system that Kevin Stefanski wants to run, the wide zone scheme?
Yeah, those mock drafts are interesting. The Isaiah Simmons ones I want to comment on real quickly. I just don't see the Browns not addressing left tackle unless something like a Trent Williams trade happens. So I think we're having the right conversation here when we're trying to pick between these 4 tackles because they're not going to let – it gets really thin after those 4, Thomas, Wirfs, Becton, Wirfs, Becton, Thomas, Wills. So, yeah, and with those 4 – I like Thomas. He ran wide zone at Georgia. He actually blocked for Nick Chubb a couple of years ago. So he knows the scheme already. And when you have a guy, look, you can teach this stuff just fine. And I'm sure a guy like Wills can pick it up and would run these concepts great. But when you have a guy who already has the familiarity, especially now, teams have to consider, look, this is probably going to be a draft teams are going to study considering the circumstances everyone's going to be selecting. You're not going to pro days. You're not talking to other teams about who they like and all this chatter. You're at home, you're on your laptop, you're picking out what guys like. So they're going to trust their eyes and they're going to go with familiarity. And that's why I think Thomas is a guy that the Browns are really going to consider and the name Browns fans may want to get familiar with. As I'm saying, he's already running wide zone. His feet show that he has the ability to get outside and remain that power when he gets outside. He has a nice frame. He doesn't overextend himself. He doesn't lose his footing when he's getting out there and trying to be athletic and play on the perimeter with those fast linebackers and safeties. If it's not Thomas, then I think it's worse. This guy's a state champion wrestler in high school and the best vertical in the draft, fastest 40 at the combine. I don't see how this kid can really miss. You hate saying you can't have a can't miss prospect because it's a 50% bust rate in the first round anyway. But just on the athletic tools alone, and when you read stories about this kid, he seems to have his head on straight and is just a hungry player. So between those two guys, they're both capable of coming in and running exactly what Stefanski wants in the wide zone, looking at their feet, looking at their power on the outside to get guys like Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb the ability to create in space.
What do you think about Wills? That's the kid from Alabama. We've already talked a little bit that Becton might not be the best fit just based on that. How does Wills seem to fit into what the Browns might want to do?
Yeah, well, Wills is, again, I don't think you necessarily can go wrong with Wills, but there's a few things that I think make him not necessarily a match for the Browns. First, he played right tackle due to Tua's left-handed throwing, which technically you're protecting Tua's blind side, but you're still playing right tackle rather than having that left tackle experience. Now, you can say the same thing about Wirfs, who played right tackle at Iowa, but you can watch plenty of tape where they flipped him to the left side, sort of like you do in high school, and he did just fine there. And his athletic tools make him more capable there than I think Wills. Wills' feet look great at the combine, and he put up numbers where if this was a normal year at tackle, he probably would be the first tackle taken. But that adds to why the Browns can't pass on either one of these four. In hindsight, it would look really bad if, three of these four become 10-year tackles and two of them become Hall of Famers and the Browns pass on all four. So I think at 10, unless a Trent Williams trade happens, it's going to be a tackle. And for me, it's Thomas or Wirfs, but you can't go wrong with Wells, as you said. And then Becton's that big body who I don't think fits the wide zone. But again, you see a guy with that type of talent walking off the bus, you're going to be happy to run behind him if you're Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt.
Who are some of the guys, the linebacker types, not named Isaiah Simmons, that you think might fit in, and also some safeties to keep an eye on as you get into that second and third round? Who do you like there that the Browns might look to answer those needs on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, linebacker is one of the most interesting spots in this NFL draft class right now. Once Simmons is off the board, you're looking at Kenneth Murray out of Oklahoma and Patrick Queen out of LSU as your next two linebackers. And those two have gone anywhere between somewhere in the mid-first round to early second. And there's a world where one of them falls to the Browns at 41. It wouldn't surprise me if the Browns get aggressive and go after a guy like Patrick Queen, who you can land at the end of the first or early second round. They only would have to move up 6-7 spots to be in that ballpark. And they've got some picks to trade around with. They could get creative, as they have already been, as we saw in free agency. So if you're looking for the top tier linebackers, those are the two names. Grant Talbot falling, as I think it was either McShay or Kuiper projected. That's real interesting to me, because that's another guy who had an end of the first round grade. And if he goes all the way down to 41, the Browns are getting a quality safety who, along with Sheldrick Redwine, will be two young safeties that the Browns could groom. And Talbot's the type of player who could come in and challenge for a starting spot right away. What worries you a little bit about Talbot is, this tends to be a recurring theme at these SEC schools that reload rather than rebuild. He doesn't have an extensive playing history. He's not a 3-year starter or anything like that, where you see more of that in the Big Ten. But you can't argue with his athletic gifts. And when you're getting an LSU Tiger, it comes with just that natural idea that you're getting a prospect that might be a little further ahead. I know if some college football fans are watching that, they may not like to hear it, but you get that SEC bias, of course, in any draft. So landing Talbot there would be interesting. And then guys we've talked about before, Ashton Davis, Antoine Winfield Jr., and those are names there I could see being really good fits in Cleveland. It really just depends on what type of safety Joe Woods is looking for to hold down that backfield for him.
Who are some names of wide receivers that you think might fit in? And because we've also said tight ends to keep an eye on or keep an ear on as you look into that third, fourth round range.
Yeah, so forgive my Big Ten bias here, but I already mentioned KJ Hill. He's a guy who fits what Stefanski wants to do. Smart football player, is going to be able to find his way in zones, and he set the Ohio State record for receptions. This guy is sure-handed as they get, and he knows how to get open. Another guy, again, forgive my bias, a Minnesota Golden Gopher, Tyler Johnson. He's really in a tough spot right now. He didn't run at the combine, assuming he was going to have his pro day and run his 40 there. That's not happening now. So these athletes, I'm sure, are going to find ways to get their numbers out. But he could go later than – he was a guy that people thought could climb, and now without the pro day, that seems unlikely to happen. So if we're talking later round receivers, 4th, 5th round type of stuff, I'd be surprised if he falls on the 6th, but crazier things have happened. That's a kid who is going to come in and be able to win in the slot right away, but eventually you could groom him to be that outside receiver to replace Odell Beckham Jr. or Jarvis Landry eventually, and you get great value there. And I think that's something, as we go back to studying this draft, front offices are going to do. They're going to figure out why guys fall this year compared to other years and try and capitalize on that going forward. And that's one name of a guy who could fall and then the Browns can land him due to the familiarity with the Minnesota connection with Kevin Stefanski and just his overall ability as a proven playmaker with the Golden Gophers last year.
Any tight ends to keep an ear out for that you like that are not necessarily the top one or two that might be off the board as the Browns? I think you're onto something. I think even if Njoku is here and Kevin Stefanski really likes him, that's a position that as long as they're running that offense, they're going to need to continually feed developmental tight ends into that pipeline. Is there anybody that you look at in that draft that you think this might be a guy they think they can develop?
Yeah, you look at what makes this tight end class really interesting is you worry about, and I talked about this earlier, how tough the position is to play. So if these guys have any sort of red flags, it becomes hard to invest that second or third round capital in them because they're going to come in and be asked to do a whole lot for Kevin Stefanski. So Cole Kemp from Notre Dame stands out to me. He's really the guy that if you're going to get a tight end in this class, it has to be him. Now, it really depends on how the market goes with the draft. Is someone going to overdraft this kid because they think he's a step above, or do they think he's really just number one by default? You can't crown a number one, and then you could find some value with him dropping. If he has the right price tag, I think you go out and land him as coming from Notre Dame. You come from a storied program like that, an ability to understand what Kevin Stefanski is trying to do. You kind of go the opposite of Njoku, who was drafted for his spark scores and his athletic testing. And that's proven to be great when he gets the ball in his hands and can do that. But again, I really am skeptical about how David Njoku is going to fit in this offense. I hope I'm wrong, and the Browns have two tight ends that can make life easier for Baker Mayfield. But as you said, it's a spot that they're going to keep looking to upgrade. It's just this year in the draft, it doesn't look like this is the year to target that. So if Njoku's a one-year stopgap or the rookie Stephen Carlson steps up next year, that might take care of itself, and then we're talking tight ends in the top of the draft next year at this time.
Ellis Williams, as always, great stuff. We appreciate the insight with the Browns as far as the draft, free agency, and Kevin Stefanski and the challenges he faces. Ellis Williams, you can read him in The Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, Browns beat reporter. That'll do it for us on this edition of More Sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners edition. Remember, Les Levine back in the chair Monday from 6 to 7. We'll see you again next Friday. Stay safe. Have a great weekend, everyone. Good night.